name is Alex. A bit more than a year ago, I was hit with the realization that as a species we have the power to create a much better world for all living beings. This realization was the main motivation for me to become an activist and help to create a better world. But it also brought me into a world of frustration. Frustration in the face of the apathy and mindless consumerism that so many find themselves under, despite knowing in their hearts that something is deeply wrong with our society and that we could do much better. I now ask myself, is there even a point in fighting? Should I carry on with my struggle? Or should I call it a day and accept things as they are? How are activists even perceived by the general public? And when is the world gonna wake the hell up? Over the next few months, I will be setting off on a spiritual journey throughout which I will be meeting with various friends, activists that I have collaborated with in the past, and random members of the public in order to determine my future as an activist. I'm quite looking forward to it, so sit back and enjoy the ride.
What's my opinion about activism? Well, I'm glad you asked me that. It's a good question. I think without activism, we wouldn't be here today. Activism has essentially shaped the world we're in. It's given us the vote, it's effectively given us the industrial society that we live in, because if people then hadn't moved to create the industrial society, we'd still be living in feudalism. If people hadn't rebelled against the kinds of things that were oppressing them, which is essentially what activism is, then we would still be living in the dark ages. So activism, I think it's great.
It's good that there is activism. It brings you information that, well, it's not mainstream information. It gives you alternate information, alternate solutions, alternate theories that you can, by yourself do your own research and then make your own mind about it. So it's always good to have the options, whether you agree or not. It's good to know what's out there and then make up your mind later on.
Just come to me, follow my voice. We will give you a free hug, or you can get 2 for the price.
Activism is just being active, it's being proactive in something that you see as a good cause. I think in some ways the word activism doesn't even need to exist. It's sort of like just being a responsible human being. But because we live in such an irresponsible society, there has to be a word for sort of normal behaviour, which isn't just normal behaviour, and we call that activism.
When it comes to activism, I feel that if there were no activists, then we wouldn't have any human rights. I think a lot of people don't understand when they see sort of activism on the news, sort of protests going on, they think, oh, I'd never do that, but they don't understand it's the only thing that changes anything, when people sort of stand up for one another.
I think like in everything, you should just be balanced. You should just try for an equilibrium. You shouldn't be an extremist and believing every conspiracy or alternative theory there is, but you shouldn't just swallow everything that you're told. I think you should look for solid, reasonable support for the things you believe in. They might not be the mainstream theories, but don't go believing things because it's against the system. You need to find an equilibrium.
I started out almost entirely on my own, hitting the streets with my megaphone, trying to spread awareness and understanding through use of comedy. In this time I experienced a lot of frustration, stress, and often a sense of futility.
Ladies and gentlemen, please make your way to your next shopping experience. Only through material possessions may you become fulfilled as human beings. The shops are where it's at. The shops are your mecca. And the corporations are your gods.
My determination did eventually pay off, and my friends slowly began to show an interest in my work, although it was mainly the more light-hearted forms of activism that I engage in, such as giving out free hugs.
I'm always open to a certain type of activism. I'm always open to, for example, initiatives like spreading the love with free hugs. I think for one, it's a lot of fun, and it gets people into a good mood, makes them smile for a while, and it's always a good thing. There's no harm in that. I would be willing to get involved in a cause that I felt close to. So if I ever experienced extreme poverty, or if I ever, even if indirectly, experienced, you know, starvation or any other type of extreme condition, I'm pretty sure I would be more sensitive to it, and I would try to fight for it. But you know, I do live in a sort of protective bubble, and I have everything I need around me. I don't know what being homeless is. I'm sure that if I had gone through that experience, I would be willing to be more involved with that cause.
There's an overwhelming amount of issues that one could choose to focus on and could put energy into, and organize groups and research, and it just goes on and on and on. And I think throughout human history that was always the case. There was always unjust situations, there was always people fighting against these unjust situations, and somehow we each need to find our place. We each need to really see what resonates most with us, where our efforts are going to have maximum results. And I think that's where everyone should focus. There's no, you know, one size fits all over here. It's really all about finding your place in this massive web of interactive systems. And through doing this, then you're sure that you're doing the best you can in that place, in that moment, in that situation that you're in. And the repercussions are massive.
Many aspects of modern-day society were shaped to an extent by past activism. It is therefore safe to assume that through their actions, activists who are fighting in the present day are collectively shaping our future society. What is it that activists strive for? What do they wish to achieve through their efforts? And what are the visions that drive their actions? What is it that motivates activists to keep on fighting?
I wish to see a world without poverty, war, corruption, and for us to have global sustainability and freedom, like true freedom. See, I ask a lot of people, like, why don't you care? Why can't you see how big these problems are? And the general response I get is the fact that if it doesn't affect them, then why should they care? Everyone seems to think that it's just about self-preservation and just looking out for themselves, but it's just not practical. We have to look out for one another in order to survive on this planet. I mean, things are getting so bad that we're just setting ourselves up for our own suicide, I feel.
Essentially, if we don't fight against the people who are intent on ensuring that the people who are weaker and poorer than them stay weaker and poorer than them, then those who are weaker and poorer will keep getting weaker and poorer, and the richer and more powerful will keep getting richer and more powerful. And all societies have that essential dynamic within them. Whether or not it's right is another issue. I mean, I don't think it is. I think society should be structured much more differently to ensure that there is a great deal more equality. Just because people are able to become richer and more powerful doesn't necessarily mean that they should. But hey, that's the way that capitalism works. And maybe we should argue whether or not we should change the economic society that we live in, the economic system that we live in.
In my first years as a so-called activist, I found myself participating in many groups, in many protests, speeches, sending letters left, right and centre. Every week we'd be facing a new issue, we'd be in a way confronting all these subjects that involve a lot of distress, a lot of anger, a lot of rage. Those were the emotions that were created inside of me, and I used these different methods of activism in a way to channel this anger that I had inside of me. And after a while, after a few years of repeatedly falling into these same patterns of being aggravated by a certain issue, and then in different forms that activism may take, direct action, protests, speeches, marches, try and get this rage out. In the process, yes, we would raise awareness, yes, people were interested, it was great, it was a great satisfaction to see that there was a response, that people appreciated what we were doing, and in some cases even managed to change regional policy, and that did give a sense of gratitude and satisfaction of actually bearing fruits from the work that we were putting into this, from our efforts.
I've seen enough in my 21 years of life to be convinced beyond doubt that a better world is possible. And I guess like many activists, apart from personal reasons such as building confidence and improving myself, I'm driven primarily by anger and fear of what's to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, look at all these policemen who have come to police this event today. I wonder why they are wasting their time with us when there are war criminals on the loose, running this country and running the world. Is it perhaps because the laws come up from above and not from below? Is it perhaps that the police are protecting the corporations and not the people whom they swore an oath to protect?
Yeah, definitely! But as the years went by, I realized that there was something missing, something wasn't quite right. In many cases I saw, for example, that we were dealing with some faraway issue, trying to raise awareness about the drug wars in Colombia, or the inequalities of the Palestinian people. And we'd find ourselves in little rooms. Here we are, a bunch of activists sitting together with all the good intentions to try and do something about the situation. And what started to appear is that we could barely look after the few people we had around us. There was often arguments, there was fights, and yes, it's all good getting together and trying to do something about these faraway issues, but suddenly I got this click that, whoa, we've got issues ourselves. We've got, there's a lot of things that aren't right here in our back gardens. And here we are wanting to change the world, wanting to change policy. And that's when I sort of landed on earth. I found myself a bit more grounded and said, well, let's take a step back at this and reassess the situation. And that's when I started looking into alternative forms of activism. That's an interesting term. And really trying to come a lot closer to home. I think there's a lot of value in the phrase think global but act local, because a lot of the things start right here at home with our own consumer choices, with where we choose to spend our dollar, what sort of organizations we have amongst us, the way we deal with our community, the way we deal with our families, the way we deal with our friendships, with education, and all these issues that are, at the end of the day, directly related to what's going on all over the world, but are manifested and are determined by what we do right here, right now.
I think people need to try and get out of the defensive stance and take a broader view of things. And I think, because there's a lot of duplication going on, a lot of redundancy within in activist entities, activist organisations. You get two groups fighting for exactly the same thing, but with slightly different semantically phrased slogans. So people need to sort of realise that we're all sort of fighting for the same thing. One, truth, increase in our well-being and happiness, and then just the basic things like food, shelter, warmth, love. That's what we're all fighting for at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure there are probably some fringe groups that aren't, but I think that's what we're all aiming for. So we need to realise that everyone's trying to do the same thing, and we need to cooperate. Everybody has a place in the in this journey, and we all need to sort of work together. Instead of sort of pulling in each direction. No, listen to me. No, listen to me. We all need to just sort of sit down and get on with it, and amalgamate.
Why aren't I an activist anymore? I think it's because I found other things that interested me more, to be frank. Basically, I think if you're going to do activism properly, you need pretty much to do it full time. You need to really devote a huge amount of time and energy to it. And I think as you get older, you actually realise there are so many more things that you could do with your time in all sorts of different ways. And that the kind of activism that you see out on the streets in demonstrations and so on and so forth. Although I've been on lots of demonstrations, even quite recently, but certainly you probably need to be a bit younger. But that's no excuse, frankly. That's just really rather pathetic, so I just won't give you that answer at all.
So as an individual, I actually have a great say in what happens, and rather than fighting against something negative and feeding the system more negativity, it's actually a lot more effective for everyone and for my own well-being, the people around me, the people I talk to. It's a lot more effective to engage in positive action, in taking responsibility in our own hands and securing things that give us independence, they give us autonomy, they give us, first of all, liberate us from any sort of contribution to these negative oppressive systems that for so long we've been raging against. And that feeling is really such a enriching, powerful experience. And at the end of the day, it all comes down, for me at least, because everyone has their own opinions and they're all equally valid, and all forms of activism, all forms of protest are valid. I'm not saying that they're not, but it is really, at the end of the day, each one of us finding what lies closest in our hearts, what's the best for us, and seeing that it will do good to us, that will have repercussions around us, in our families, in our communities, in the friendships that we make, in the way that we lead our lives.
Well, I think we're kind of stuck in a rut at the moment as a society, and it would be great to see a break, you know, people breaking out of tradition. I mentioned earlier the sort of people just do whatever they do because that's just the way it is sort of mentality, and we really need to break out of that sort of apathy towards anything for us to progress. And yeah, so people need to get shaken up, I think, and you know, start thinking more. I'd like to live in a world where people think more.
Apart from the odd comment from members of the public telling me to get a job, to which I generally respond by saying,
I'm a filmmaker, sir. This is my job.
the response from the police, as well as the public, is generally quite positive. Almost every time I go out, I come back saying exactly the same thing. That basically there are extreme amounts of love out there. All that needs to be done is for them to be united and directed towards a brighter tomorrow.
Hello, sir. Would you like a hug?
Of course I would. If you're protesting for hug,
Definitely.
I'll just see what you are protesting.
We're not exactly protesting.
You're not exactly protesting.
We're just a group of individuals who thought we'd come out and spread the love.
Okay, so you're not protesting, you're spreading the love.
We're spreading the love in the philosophy of Gandhi, who said that, what did Gandhi say? He said,
Lots of things.
create the world that you wish to see, basically. So I wish to see
A happier world.
I
I think everybody wishes to see that. It's a nice thought. It's nice, isn't it? Okay, so what are you going to do? Just going to hang around here, are you?
Yeah, we're not gonna. It's not gonna take long.
Okay. And you're just you three, is it? Okay.
We do this. Well, I do this quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Lovely. All right, then I'll leave you to it.
And by the way, yeah, I've actually been doing this for quite a while, and you're the first authority figure that I managed to hug. So
Oh well, there you go. There you go.
You've
I'm just a hugger.
You've made
Just
my
a hugger. I love the love. That's fine.
Well done.
Right, I'll leave you to it then, guys. Okay, have fun.
Okay, thank you very
Take care.
much.
We will be checking you all for smiles. Anyone caught in non-possession of a smile will be beaten with our truncheons of love.
So are you guys doubting that everything is okay? Is
Yes,
everything
everything's not okay.
But the thing is that on the other side it says don't believe anyone, including not even
I
you.
completely believe you though. Look at your face, it's so trustworthy.
Oh yeah, cheers.
I believe it because of my own thoughts, not because of what anyone's telling me.
You know, you see, we all have a voice of reason inside our heads, and at the same time we've got a bunch of people who tell us, you know, think this way, do this, do that, you know, don't do that. And, you know, our voice of reason inside our head dies down slowly.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to remind you that you are all beautiful, spiritual children of God with all the secrets to happiness inside your heart. You do not need anything else in order to be happy.
There are a lot of reasons to be optimistic in these times, despite the fact that so many aspects of society seem to be crumbling down around us. People are catching on and taking to the streets at an ever-increasing rate and refusing to support this madness any longer.
As you just said there, people are really becoming privy to the fact that something is wrong and our system is not providing for humanity. But people, they don't understand that there can be an alternative. Many people, you know, they're just like, yeah, it's so bad. And it's pub talk. It's like, oh yeah, the government's done this, the government's done that. Have you heard about this? And it's just like, they're complacent in it because they're just like, oh well, it's just the way of the world, isn't it?
Like a dead end, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just a cop out. You know, people, oh yeah, it's really bad. Have you seen what's going on in Libya right now? Yeah, it's really bad. You know, we can't do anything about it, but really we can, because if we stand up and say no, we want better, that is it. People are receptive to this a lot more than they were a few years ago because it's so in their face now. It's, you know, how it's common knowledge that the Iraq War and Afghanistan was political. It wasn't about terrorism. Terrorism's been used as a control mechanism. That's basically public knowledge now, and the corruption in governments is it's public knowledge. People understand this, and when it's put together in a coherent fashion, people understand how the financial system's tied in with that. It becomes, you know, it's quite a powerful conversation with people then, and you know, it's just nice to be with people when they're kind of like waking up.
I guess at the end of the day, in the famous words of Edmund Burke, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. As for me, I will carry on with my struggle. I will keep on fighting to bring about a better world. And I will dream of the day when I will be able to return to nature without being at the mercy of a system that values money over people.
No matter what they say or how they've spun it, remember no one understands the world and how to run it. Understands what freedom is, but we'll stuff it down the throats of Islamists, cause they don't drink Coca-Cola or buy shares in Gap. So we'll bomb them till they're snared in the consumerist trap, and do it in the name of democracy. America is a republic, why can't you see? No matter what they say or how they've spun it, remember no one understands the world and how to run it.